switch this around real quick. Thanks for having me. It's really fun to talk to a younger crowd. I used to be the younger crowd back in the day. And actually, I would kind of hide myself for a long time in business because I felt like I had to, because I was so young. I started at 17. One of the biggest early clients that I signed was the Jacksonville Symphony Orchestra. I was 19 years old when I signed them as a client, but they didn't know I was 19. I was working out of my dorm room at UCF, and I was so cheap that they probably just figured, why not? We'll give it a try. He's got a decent portfolio. All the deal was done over email and phone calls. We never met in person until it was done. Once the project was launched, I was up in Jacksonville visiting my family from Orlando at the time, and I got to go out to dinner with their marketing director, their creative director, and their CEO, who were 40, 50, 60 years old in that order. And I was 19. And you can dress up 19 all you want, but you're still 19. And it's funny because at the time, I really wanted to look like I was older, and now that I have 5 children and I'm 36, I'd be happy to look like I was 19 again. But at the same time, the biggest thing for me is you all are at an age where you have so much opportunity. You have so much ability now to connect. And I think that all of the common, people love to talk about millennials in a relatively negative format. It's not a positive word. But what was really interesting is my oldest is 13. And the other day he was watching Survivor. And he likes to watch all the latest Survivors. He loves them. But he started watching them from the very beginning. And what was funny about that is there was a season, which you can go back and see, and it was like Gen X versus baby boomers. And what was so funny about it was that all the baby boomers, the whole season, complained about the Gen Xers in the exact same way that everybody complains about the millennials now. And I think that the biggest thing for me from that young age was don't be discouraged by your age. You have so much opportunity and so much to contribute. And at 17, my first year in business, I started it with a partner, and our total revenue that year was about $5,370. That was it. But thankfully, I only needed money to pay for movies on the weekend, and that was about it. Now I've got 5 kids, and it's a little different. And I got a big team. But most of my team are under 30. And they're amazing. They're awesome, awesome at what they do, awesome communicators. But even still, I'll have times where I'll have older clients come in and they kind of go, I don't know, because they look around the table and see all these young eyes. So don't be discouraged by that. What I want to do is just share a few ideas about business that I think matter. They're on my podcast, Building a Business That Lasts. They're in the book. But they're things that I find interesting. 96% of businesses fail within the first 10 years. That's 4 out of 100 that make it past that decade mark. So everybody on my podcast has been in business for more than 10 years. They're the 4 out of 100 that have made it past that marker. There is a difference. I think I put this bell right in front of the screen. That's okay. There is a difference between owning a job and owning a business. How many of you here are aspiring entrepreneurs and hope to actually own your own business at some point? So a handful. And how many of you would like to work for a larger company and see how you can benefit that type of organization? How many of you have no idea what you're doing? Okay, that's all good. You're at a point in life where that's fine. It's okay. Explore, try a bunch of stuff. But when you're thinking about owning your own business, a lot of times people don't own a business, they own a job. They thought that they were creating more freedom and more opportunity, and they're not. Starting a business is easy, but making it last and creating real freedom in it is actually really hard. This is one thing that I think is really important, and that is that it is okay to grow slow. So many people today, we live in such an impatient society. My kids are so used to Netflix, and this is how I feel old when I start having conversations like this. But when I was a kid, when you wanted to watch a particular cartoon, you had to wake up at a certain time on Saturday morning, and if you missed it, it was till next Saturday when you got to see it. We were at a beach house one time, and we don't have cable at home, and my kids were watching regular TV, and they were like, well, what's going on? This show's over. I want to start it over. I'm like, you can't. That's it. It's over. And they're like, what? Why would people do this? But we live in this impatient society where we feel like we have to have something now. And some of you even now look around the room and see other people that you feel like are ahead of where you are, and you feel like, man, I'm just not there yet. I need to be more successful. I need to do this. I need to do that. And you got so much time. And it will go by quickly, so don't waste your time. Don't waste your life. But you do have the opportunity to grow slow. And here's why. that year when I was 17 years old and we only made $5,000, we have grown every single year. For next Friday was 19 years, but I like to say 20. It's close enough. Next year is 19 years, and we've grown every single year, top and bottom line. Revenue and profit has grown every single year for 19 years in a row. Recessions and all, every single year we've grown. And this year, we'll do millions of dollars in sales. We've done millions and millions and millions of dollars in sales over the last 20 years, and it all started with $5,000. So anything's possible. It's okay to grow slow, and I believe that's the formula for really lasting. It's okay to say no. Like, you're going to get a lot of people that want you to do all kind of stuff. And it's awesome to see you all involved here. I'm going to go back to my Rotary and ask why we don't get to have beer at our Rotary. So we'll see. Maybe it's a demographic thing. I don't know. But it's okay to say no. One thing somebody told me one time was every time you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to 1,000 others. That's really, really, really important. Every time you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to 1,000 others. Some people inherently have a very difficult time saying no. And you have to learn over time to say yes to the right things and no to the right things, and that will change everything, especially when you're growing a business. But even if you're growing a career, these principles really apply within a career as much as they do within business ownership. That's just the path that I chose. You got to learn to juggle money, especially if you're going to own a business. Here's what I mean by this. What happens a lot of time in business, this is why businesses fail most often, is cash flow. They don't understand how cash has to keep coming in. When you think about a juggler, most basic juggler has 3 balls, right? And they're juggling them in the air. They have to, in business, understand that one of those is the pipeline, potential business that's coming in that's not closed. The other is receivables. That's money that people have promised to give you but haven't actually given you yet. And then there's the best, and that's cash. Cash is always king. Stay out of debt. That's another thing. Fight debt like anything else. I'm telling you right now, there is nothing that you can do at your age that you will pay a bigger price for than sinking yourself really deeply in debt. Now, some of you are thinking, I'm already there. Like, I got school debt, I got whatever debt. Like, look, I get it. You know, when I got married, my wife and I both had college loans, we both had car loans, we both had credit cards, we both had all the things, and we learned to pay them off. I'm a big believer in Dave Ramsey, Financial Peace University, baby step stuff. That stuff is rock solid, works every single time. You just got to follow the system. So if you're already there, find your way out, and your freedom potential for the future is so much better. That's the biggest reason that we've been able to grow through recessions was lack of debt. And to be honest, we actually took on a little bit of debt a couple of years ago when I put our big fancy office down in St. Augustine. And now I'm like, because I operated for 16 years with zero debt. And that allows you to get through anything, because when you're in a zero debt, high cash position, when things go south, that's when the people with cash make the most money. Because when the market collapses and you've got cash, you go, great, I'll buy a new property. I'll buy a new this. I'll buy a new that, because the prices are everything's half off. But when you don't have the money and you are already over leveraged with debt, you got a problem. I have no idea how much time I've used, so y'all yell at me if I take too long. Man, I just believe in this so much. Who's heard of Simon Sinek? Anybody? Yeah. Yeah. So if you haven't listened to him, go do it tonight. Go to the TED Talk. Y'all are all millennials, so you probably watch plenty of TED Talks. But go find this one. Start with why. There's actually an original video of him like standing at a whiteboard drawing on it, and that is rock solid stuff. You have to know why you're doing something. Years and years ago, when my agency was only making $20,000 in total revenue, and I just got married, and we wanted to have kids, and I just didn't know if I could make enough money, I started working for my uncle in the insurance business. He owns an agency downtown and does really well. And he needed a long-term exit strategy, and I needed a short-term cash strategy. And so I was going to take over his business over 20 years, and he would fade out. It was a silver spoon. It was a great opportunity. Why not? So I worked with him for 6 months. Best business education I ever had, real life. I remember a lady calling him one time, and she was so angry. I have no idea what she was angry about, but she was so angry. And by the end of that phone call, she was going, "Oh, Tim, I'm so sorry." I'm like, "How did you do that?" And he's like, "I just listened to her." Like, stop, listen, understand. None of us know what today looks like for somebody else, and most of the time when people really freak out on you, it's not you. Most of the time when people really freak out on you, it's because they just found out their dad has cancer. It's because their dog just died. It's because who knows what. And you're just one more thing, or what you're involved in is just one more thing. So you got to know your why. You got to know your mission and values. For us, they're really important at my agency. They're so important we actually drew them up on the wall. And so we have 6 core values. 3 of them relate to work, and 3 of them are a little bit more personal. Joy, family, and faith are all really important to us. As I said, I have 5 kids. Every now and then I even get to preach at a local church. And so faith's really important to me. Joy is really important to me. I don't believe you should hate Monday. We all spend way too much time working. And it's okay to hate it in the short term. Let me be really clear. Like, in the short term, it's okay to hate it and like really just put your head down and plow through it, because sometimes you have to. Like, there were a lot of days where I hated a lot of things that I did and I just plowed through. But you got to know why you're doing what you're doing. And that, going back to the story that I was talking about with my uncle, I spent 6 months working with him in the insurance business. And one day I went home. This is when I knew I married the right woman. And I said, I was pretty upset. And I was like, I hate this. I hate everything about it. I went from a creative industry of a marketing design agency to an insurance industry. And if you get too creative in insurance, you go to jail. So that's not good. And I just hated it. I loved working with my uncle. It was one of the best experiences I could have ever had as far as learning how to run a business. But I hated the industry. And my wife said, just do what you love. And my business was not making enough money to take care of us at that point. She was going to school. I think I had quit school at this point already. I quit college. I worked for some people. It doesn't work for others. And we were both waiting tables to pay the bills. And she just said, just do what you love. And I did. And that was the day. I remember specifically saying, I wonder if I'll ever have enough money just to keep me busy for a whole week. And I didn't. Now I got a team of 12 people that have way too much work to do, and I probably need to hire more people. And plus a ton of contractors outside of that do full-time work. So, like, be willing to know your why and your purpose, focus on those things, and then find that path for where you want to go. I'm going to run out of time talking about that. I'm going to talk about this. Do I? Okay, good. So, one of the chapters in my book is You Are in the Sales Business. There are a few select psychopaths who really love to sell. Right? Like, there's like a few of them, you're like, man, what is wrong with that person? And then there's everybody else. And selling is one of those things that when we hear the word sales, a lot of times the image is conjured up of this used car salesman with his hair slicked back, and I'm going to cut you a deal today. I got to go back and talk to the boss, and we'll see if we can work something out. And that's the feeling that's often conjured up with selling. But another thing that my uncle taught me during that 6 months was, if you really want to sell, just help them. Stop selling and start helping. And if you can reprogram your head, because I really do believe everybody's in the sales business. You're either selling yourself to get a promotion, or you're selling your product or service. Everybody, you're selling yourself when you're trying to find a spouse. Everybody's in the sales business, whether you know it or not. And you have to understand that, but you have to really think through, how can I help that person? This is actually a famous quote by Zig Ziglar, if you know who he is, an old motivational speaker who passed away not that long ago. I got to see him one time before he died, and he was awesome. Stop selling and start helping, but you got to know your product or service. If you're going to do that, you got to listen to the other person, and you got to be willing to walk away if you're not able to help them. Because I can sell a lot of stuff to a lot of people, but if it's not the right thing for that person or for that company, in the long run, it's only going to come back and bite me. Growing a business is really easy. Find people that need or want or desire a product or service and sell it to them at the price they're willing to pay. That's less than whatever it costs for you. That's it. Like, just do that. When I was a kid, my very first business that I ever ran was a concession stand out of a little red wagon. And I was at a baseball field. I have naturally always been much better at academics than athletics, if I'm being honest. I was not a good baseball player, but what I did notice is that there was no concession stand at this field. And a lot of people were complaining about it, and I thought, I think we could sell concessions to these people. Now, that's no different than the regular lemonade stand, right? Like, everybody's had a lemonade stand as a kid, just something that everybody does as a kid, or at least sees somebody that does. But what's the problem with a lemonade stand? Location. Location, right? The location of a lemonade stand is often in somebody's front yard, where cars are driving by, where people are not thirsty. And it's a pain to stop. And the only reason they do is just to be nice to the little kid. And so there's not a lot of traction there. But at a baseball field in the spring in Florida, where it's super hot and sunny and there's no concessions there, that's an opportunity. And so the same lemonade stand in the back of a little red wagon dragged around can do really well. And that was the very first business that I ever ran. And until I quit baseball, because I was really bad at that, it worked really well. But I was helping people, something they needed, wanted, and desired. And I could go to Sam's Club and buy it for this price and resell it for that price. I mean, that's all there is to it. It's that simple. I don't even know what my next slide is. Keep learning. This seems obvious, but I think that one of the things that is a big problem for a lot of people is that education in our country right now, it has been like this for a long time, is put in this box, right? We go to preschool and we check that box. Now we graduate from that, which I think is ridiculous. And then, my littlest one is 5. She's graduated from VPK. They do like the whole cap and gown. I mean, they are super cute. Like, I'll give you that. But golly. Anyway, and then we have kindergarten, then we graduate from that. And then we have elementary school, then middle school, then high school, and then college. And then we are like done with our education. But that's just insane. Like, especially in today's world, education, I believe that's the biggest market for disruption right now. Well, I mean, that and healthcare, really. But healthcare and education, education's not mentioned as much, but education has skyrocketed at a price, traditional education has skyrocketed at a price way higher than healthcare. Healthcare is just the one that we focus on. Because we're happy to take on massive debt for education because we believe it's going to further our future, even if that's not true. Right. And healthcare, we feel like, is like we waited till the last second and we got to deal with it. And it is super ridiculously expensive and that needs to be dealt with too. But the education, if you look at that model, the healthcare one goes like this and the education one goes like that. Yeah. It's a nuts chart. And we live in a world where we can go on YouTube and look up literally anything. Like you can have the best of the best of the best that are way better than me standing in front of you, like teaching you whatever you want to learn. Like that's amazing. Don't miss that opportunity. And think about your weaknesses. Like I'm naturally a very slow reader. I suck at reading. I think one of my children's actually dyslexic, and I didn't realize it until after I was going through his symptom list, where I was like, oh, that's me. I think I might. Well, when I went into elementary school, I had like the highest average in every grade except for spelling, and I had like a C-. You think somebody would have been like, why does this kid suck so bad at reading and spelling? Yeah, matter of fact, to this day, there was a slide literally like an hour ago that was misspelled in this. I didn't even notice the red squiggly underneath it telling me it was misspelled. But find opportunities to keep learning. So because I can't read very well, I do Audible. I listen to a minimum of 1 book a month, usually a lot more than that, on Audible every single month. Also, I just found out about this. There's a program, I cannot remember the name of it. Some of you may know. There's a program online where you can get an app and it connects to your library. Overdrive, that's it. And you can get audiobooks for free. Sometimes you got to wait in like a queue to get it, but they're free audiobooks from your library. It's really, really cool. And there's some great apps around that, so check that out. It's called Overdrive, right? Yeah. That's really worth learning. Books, to me, have become like, they're just rocket fuel. You can learn so much so fast. Speaking of books, here's my book. I know, Rotary, you're not supposed to sell stuff, so I'm sorry about that. But I just released this on Friday. I'm super excited about it because the story I want to tell about this is not about the book itself or you buying the book. I really don't make much money on them anyway, so I really could care less whether you buy it, unless it helps you. I hope it does if you do get it. But the book itself was something that last summer I went to a big event called Entree Leadership. If you've not read that book, it's a book by Dave Ramsey. He's most known for his financial stuff, but Entree Leadership is his business book, and it's one of my all-time favorite books. Buy that book instead of my book, actually. It's really, really good. And then buy my book. And in that book, he has these live events. So I went to one last year. I got to meet Lou Holtz. I got to meet Simon Sinek. I got to meet Dave. I got to meet a lot of really cool. I got to meet John Maxwell, which is awesome. A lot of really cool people. And in that book, he really just outlines a practical formula for how to operate in business that I think works really well. And I left that event and thought, man, I've always wanted to write. Like, people are always like, oh, you've been in business 20 years, you've done this, you got a big family, you've managed to balance it all without getting divorced after 15 years. And I love my wife more now than ever. So how did you do it? I'm like, well, I'm going to write it down. And then I thought, well, I'm going to do a podcast first, and that'll give me opportunity to talk to other business owners and kind of progress from one step to the other. Right? So the podcast to some extent, this is the secret formula, is a Trojan horse for the book. The book's a Trojan horse for my marketing agency, because the ideal client for me for the book is somebody who is starting in business, doing relatively well, but is ready to take it to the next level from a marketing perspective. And so I wrote the first chapter in this book like beginning of August last year. Got really serious about it September, October, November. Brought in an editor to help me because I'm really bad at spelling and writing and everything else. I'm a pretty good storyteller, but I'm not good at putting it in the right structure and putting the commas where they go. Had a great editor, and now the book just got released. And the thing about something like a book is that for a lot of people, they're treating it like it's like a finish line of some sort. Like okay, like you're done now. You've grown a business for 20 years. You've done millions in sales. You got your book to talk about it, and like now you're done. I'm like, oh, this is like the warm-up. So you have to think about things in your life that feel like big accomplishments. Graduating from college is one. Getting that first big promotion is one. And you can either go, this is the finish line, or this is like the pinnacle of where I'm going, or you can be like, hey, this is the starting point. This is the warm-up of where I'm actually going. I really used to believe in setting really measurable, achievable goals, and I still do believe in that. But I also believe in setting like ridiculous, outrageous dream goals. Because I think you have to have a vision for where that's going to go to eventually get there. And that doesn't matter whether you're running your own business or working for a company. It's kind of the same thing. So that's kind of like a quick, super fast overview of kind of some of the things that I believe and how I built my agency and everything else. It's very rare for me to come to an evening event like this, but I liked Charlie when we met, and y'all sound like a fun group, so I thought I'd come out. I love getting to talk to people your age, because I feel like it's just such a rich opportunity for me to speak into lives where other people spoke into my life when I was where you are, because you just have this rich possibility ahead in marriage, in parenting, in work, in all the different things that come along with life, and just enjoy it. I know it sounds stupid, but it really does go fast sometimes. So enjoy where you're at, but have a big dream of where you want to go. And I think that, for me, kind of sums up how I got to where I am. What kind of questions can I answer? Anything? In the back, green shirt.
How do you deal with objections?
Objections? I mean, I don't think that you're really successful until people start objecting to what you're doing or objecting to you. You mean in the sales process, or just like how I operate in general?
I mean, I'm sure you got told no a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is, like, if you can't deal with people telling you no, like, you're not going to do well. Like, there are more people that are going to tell you no than yes, but you got to ask. I mean, it literally goes back to you don't know until you try, right? And man, there are a lot of people that have criticized me over my life for all kind of different reasons. And there's people that don't like that I'm as open I am about my faith and how I parent our kids and everything else. And I don't really care. Like, I care about the people that I care about, and anybody else who's got negative to speak into my life, like, put yourself around the people that are the most positive. They will impact you. I really do believe in the whole idea that you're the sum average of the 5 people that you're around the most. That's a real thing. Sarah?
Okay. I'm interested because I've known you for so long. If there was ever a point in middle school or high school that, because you started the business so young, I remember when it was an idea for you that you just really just motivated you beyond just your own inner motivation to build this business and to achieve something for yourself. Was there a circumstance or an event that really just motivated you, that maybe not only that that I might remember, but that we can think back on our youth to maybe pinnacle events in our lives that really kind of cut that corner or inspired you?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing has been a lot of people, whether it's people I know or people that I've listened to or read that have motivated me. But it's interesting, when I did start to write the beginning of the book, there were things I wrote down that I didn't realize until they came out on paper, and I was like, oh, that's what happened there. And for me, my parents got divorced when I was 17. I was a junior in high school. I had to move out of my house when I was a senior in high school, and got to move in with some friends. And I think that for me, the business was an outlet for me to go, I can do my own thing. Like, I can overcome this. Because the reality is, when bad things happen, we get two choices. We get to choose to be bitter, or we get to choose to be better. And that is it. Those are the two choices that you get. And you have to decide what you're going to do with it. But there is nothing that like aches me more than people who live their whole life with like a victim mentality. I mean, there is some bad stuff that happens to people. Really bad stuff that happens to people. Some by their own fault, and some that's not by their fault. But if you just live in that victim mentality, all you got to do is look back about 100 years and look at what people used to live through, or 100 years before that, so people used to live through before that. I mean, like, read your history. I wasn't very good at history either, to be honest, a lot of memorization. But now I'm a little more interested in it, and when you look back, you go, man, people have been through some bad stuff. So for me, like, the catalyst was my parents getting divorced. It was bad stuff, you know. But over time, it was other people that have spoken in my life. My uncle was a big mentor. I've already talked about him. Other people have been big mentors in my life. Find somebody who's older than you, who's more seasoned than you, who has walked through more things than you, and ask all the questions that you can. Yeah.
So I have a question. Oftentimes when you have people that are successful, they encounter imposter syndrome. So I'm curious to know if you encountered that, you know, when you find these bridges in life where there's a big opportunity in front of you, like your podcast or your book. And a lot of times you may ask yourself the question, what makes me qualified to do this? Or am I really as good as I think I am? Or am I, there's like this gray area between self-confidence and complete extreme of doubt.
Yes.
How did you handle that or cope with it if you've encountered it yourself?
So now I feel like you're like my counselor and this is like a joke conversation. But
we'll pull up a couch.
So for real. So that's actually really poignant timing because I feel like that pretty often right now. Especially with the book and the podcast, I'm getting a lot more attention and exposure, which was by design. But once you start to get it, you're like, wait a minute, what if they find out about, like, because people are like, oh, you're really transparent. I'm like, yeah, I'm transparent about things I want to be transparent about. Like, I tell you about the failures that I want to tell you about because it makes me look good that I overcame them. Like, let's be honest.
Right.
That's the truth, right? And so, like, I struggle with that now. And ultimately, it goes back to having people that are willing to speak into my life that say, no, like, you really can be helpful. Because at the end of the day, like, even now, it's scary to come in front of a group like y'all. Even though I love standing up and talking, like, it's easy to feel like maybe I shouldn't be doing this, maybe I don't know enough. There's certainly somebody that knows more than me. But at the end of the day, out of a group this size, if one of you goes back and does something that's different than maybe you would have done because of something that I said, then like I'm winning. And I have to remember that. But it's a constant battle for me now. That imposter syndrome thing is real stuff.
It's real.
And especially when you're really successful from a young age, which I was relatively successful, at least compared to my peers at younger ages. And you feel like, okay, but there's so much stuff that I am not doing well. Like, for example, the company debt right now is a thing for me that I'm fighting hard to beat that back because I'm kind of like embarrassed by it. Even though it's pretty normal, but like I've always lived debt free, so to have that now, it feels like, oh, like I should have taken more cash and applied it over here, and I wish I'd done this, and I wish I'd done that. So I'm always going to second guess myself, but I can't focus on the past except to learn from it. I gotta look forward. So it's about having people around my life that are going to speak into me.
So you obviously have had a ton of success, and by the way, you've been, at least for me, very helpful. I really liked your presentation, but and you have a lot of stuff going on right now. I'm curious, like I noticed on your book too, it says without sacrificing family.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I struggle with is balance because I just feel like you can always do more.
Yeah.
But I have a hard time remembering that you can always do more in a lot of different things. Like what you were saying about when you say yes to something, you end up saying no to a lot of things. And that's what I say when I say yes to a work event. I end up saying no to dinner with my husband or something like that. And so, how do you struggle with balance? You run a huge company. You have all these different outlets that are going on now. How do you kind of design your time so that you're full in all the different aspects instead of just work?
Yeah. A couple things. One, I hate the word balance because it implies that things are 50-50. If you're not married yet, or even if you are, you haven't been married that long because you're pretty young, marriage is not 50-50. It's 100-100. Some days it's 0-100, and sometimes it's 0-100. There is no balance. Like I don't believe in that. I don't believe in the work-life balance. I don't believe it's about mixing your time equally between work and like the rest of stuff. So in the book, what I call it is the work-life blender. Some days you need a little bit more spinach, and some days you need a little bit more fruit. Like That's just how it is. Things just get mixed together. I mean, right now, there is some sacrifice, right? But it's not the ultimate sacrifice. Right now, my wife is sacrificing because she's at home and it is 7 o'clock, so the kids probably just finished dinner. I have 5 of them from 5 to 13, and now she's got to get them ready for bed, and I'm going to been at work all day, and then I get to roll in right when they go to sleep tonight. So, but that is about communication, and so to me, the answer really is about intentionality. When I got to see John Maxwell speak last year, one of the things he talked about, he told this story about a big tree in the backyard. And he said there's this gigantic tree that you have to cut down, and all you have is this one little axe. And you can't just go out and cut the tree down with the axe. You have to be intentional about it. He's like, but how you can cut that tree down with that axe is every morning you get up, you sharpen that axe, you go out and you take 5 swings at it. Not 100, 5. And then every day you get up and you sharpen that axe and you go out and take 5 swings at it, and eventually that tree will fall. And so the intentionality part of it for me is I block my whole schedule off. So if you were to look at my schedule for the week, this stresses some people out, but from Monday morning to Friday night, my whole schedule is completely blocked. Now some of it says go for a walk. I got a little block 15 minutes, go for a walk. 30 minutes, go play Xbox in the office. Whatever it is. And then sometimes those things change. Those can be flex times, but I'm intentional about designing that. And now that I'm married and have kids, the communication is everything. Communication with clients, communication with your spouse, communication with your friends, that's where everything breaks. So because my wife knew I was going to be here, because she planned ahead, and it's fine. If I were to do this every single night, and I guess that goes back to the balance thing, but I think it's more about seasonality. So everybody has different seasons in life. You all are in different seasons of life for the most part than I am. And so the season of life that you're in can dictate that. I used to work 18, 20 hours a day sometimes. I would hustle. I don't do that anymore. I just don't, because it doesn't fit where I'm at. Could I make more money if I came to events like this every single night, and could I book events like this every single night? Sure. But I'm sacrificing my family if I do that. And so I choose. I'm at breakfast most days and I'm at dinner most nights. And I run a multi-million-dollar company. It's doable. It's not easy all the time, but it is doable.
We have time for one last question. If anyone has one.
I go.
Nick?
Okay, so one question is this. It seems like you're in business communicating. You communicate a lot with people. But you said that you sometimes struggle with that communication. I feel the same way. I'm also dyslexic, but I'm also in sales, and I work with clients all the time, and the main thing I do is just communicate with people,
Yep.
get email. How do you? Because sometimes I feel that I want to improve my communication with people, and I want to be a much better communicator, and I will never get fully ahead unless I become a better communicator. How did you overcome that? And it's something that I really struggle with a lot when I
It's just practice. It's just over and over again. People will often look at me and be like, oh yeah, but it's easy for you. You're a natural extrovert. That's not true at all. I am a natural 100% introvert, believe it or not. I could literally sit. I used to have a single office that was attached to my house before we had the physical office that we have now as a team. And I could sit out there all day, for 10, 12 hours and just work on my laptop with zero physical human interaction and be totally fine. I had to learn to be comfortable up here. I had to learn to be comfortable one-on-one. I had to learn to be comfortable in writing. And that just came from practice. And the reality is some people get to do that easier than others. And some people have to fight harder. My oldest, who's 13, is everything's easy for him. Everything's easy for him. My next one, who's 11, who's the dyslexic one, his 6-year-old sister can almost read better than him. And he goes to tutoring, a high-end dyslexic tutor twice a week, plus everything else. He's going to have to work harder. But he has natural strengths the others don't have. That kid has charisma out the door. I mean, if you line those 3 boys up, and they're all pretty good-looking kids, couldn't make them, but I'm just kidding. It's mostly due to their mom. He has this charisma factor, this X factor that will not translate to tests. It won't. He will lose in a traditional academic setting versus all of my other children. But I actually think he's going to be the most successful. My uncle, who I talked about, who owns a pretty successful insurance agency, if you put him next to my dad, he's just not as smart. He's just not. Like my dad intellectually is a powerhouse.
Yeah.
But my uncle just has this charisma, and he cares about people, and he wants to talk to them, and he wants to engage with them. And I think with communication, whether you're good at it or bad, the thing that's most important about communication is you actually care about the person that you're communicating with. Like, I actually care if this is helpful to you. I'm not here to sell books. I make like $1. Like, it's really not. It's really not about that. You have to care about the other person, and then you just have to practice and practice and practice and practice. But I also think, last thing, I know I'm burning up all your time. Last thing is, I really believe that you have to also find areas that you're really strong at, and you might have to reveal those things over time, but then you focus on those things and let the weaknesses be done by other people. Mm-hmm. I hire out my weaknesses. I contract them out, and I hire them out, and it's great. And my strengths, I know where I'm good, because I'd rather go from a 7 to a 10 than from a 1 to a 3. 3 is still not very good. So if I make my 1 a 3, not great, but if I make my 7 a 10, that's remarkable, right? So it's finding what you're really good at, but when it's communication, care about the other person and just practice.
Thanks,
You can connect
Jay.
with me
Can we
online. If I can be helpful, you can find me on Twitter at Owen Design, or you can email me, jay@designextensions.com, and I'll do my best to reply. Happy to help if I can, and I hope today's been helpful for you.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. I would definitely recommend following him on. He's probably one of the most interesting people I follow on LinkedIn, so always keeping me entertained and educated. If you want to stay up here for a sec,
Okay,
Jay, we just wanted to say thanks and we appreciate. Tell your wife we appreciate you.
That's right. Appreciate her,
coming
not
out.
me. This is fun for me.
As a token of our appreciation, as you know, being involved with Rotary, their main initiative is to eradicate polio around the world. So we've made a donation on your behalf,
Awesome.
and that's going to go towards the inoculation of 83 more children against polio.
Wow, that's really
so
cool.
you can take that,
Thanks, John.
and appreciate you coming out.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks.
you. All right, so we're going to go ahead.